Live on Facebook. Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming, for being with us. I would like to welcome Dr. UNATI Makiwane. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To be here.
I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this day.
And my apologies about last week. I think there was a miscommunication with Sarah. It was an Easter holiday, so I don't work on weekends, on Easters or holidays. So yeah, I'm glad we can make it up.
I'm glad you're here. That's the main thing. Dr. UNATI, can you just introduce yourself? I know you from Facebook. I'm one of your followers. And I know you're very passionate in helping people. I checked your reviews, and it's very good that you respond to people's questions. Can you just introduce yourself to the people that have attended here?
Thank you so much, Nonhli, and I'm so happy to be here with you. My name is UNATI Makiwane. I'm South African Canadian. I live in Canada now for almost 11 years. I'm a family physician, mental health expert. I work in private practice. Outside my practice, I speak in platforms like yourself, or I speak in organizations, schools, NGOs, government. I work a lot with immigration. I think I focus on that because I'm an immigrant here, and there's been so much observation we see clinically. You know, when people move from their countries, there's so much change, right? You know, the culture is different, the environment. So people struggle a lot, not to say the locals or the indigenous people don't struggle, but I tend to focus, or I gravitate towards immigration or immigrants because I'm an immigrant, and I know how it feels to be in a new place. So basically my passion is mental health. I have 2 children, and more so lately I've been focusing more on boy children or men, because I think we have basically forgotten that population, and we have misconstrued ideology about their mental health. So I do this because in my practice, in the last 2.5 years, I've seen a lot of my male patients coming in, struggling with drug abuse, with alcoholism, with mental health struggles. Not to say the other populations are not, but I think it's a forgotten population. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to share my thoughts and my expertise. Thank you for welcoming me too.
Thank you so much. The topic today, Dr. UNATI, as you said, you're concentrating a lot about men, and I am very passionate also in that area because I'm raising 3 boys. And what daunted to me, is we've got this perception, or the society like saying things and we conform to that. And I'm one person, I don't like conforming to the society. Not that I'm rebellious, but I think some of the things that, they are put in our throat, forced, and we just admit them and go on with it. For the topic for today is men don't cry. Why do we say men don't cry? I've got 3 boys, and according to me, I think it's wrong that we say men mustn't show their emotions, or it's how I perceive it, that why do we say men mustn't show their emotions? Why do we say men don't cry? What is your perspective in that?
Thanks, Nonhli. You know what, it's a long-term issue. Historically, men have been seen as these beings that are stoic. As you know, back in the day, men would go out and hunt, and they would provide and do all that. And, that's hard life, right? So there's no time for emotions at that time. But then that perception grew globally. I mean, I live in this side of the world. Here, average, a man here comes, like a white man comes to me after probably 3 years of suffering with depression, silently at home, sometimes not even sharing it with his spouse. And that's basically typically of men in general. And coming from South Africa as an African person, where even the mental health actually is something new to us, and I think part of it is culturally how we are. We come from this extended family background. If you don't talk to your mother or to your aunt or to your dad, there's an aunt there, there's an uncle, there's a grandparent who can solve the issues, and then things are solved, in that family unit, and I think probably people were shielded, or probably we've had struggles with mental health, but it's something really we never really looked at, even maybe doctors, because I've been gone now for 10 years. I don't remember treating any man with depression except for when I was working in a hospital in Fort England, where probably the men that I'd seen were struggling with other things like psychosis, like schizophrenia, and then they would have maybe depressive symptoms. But typically a man would never come to an office and say, "Doc, I'm struggling." So I think historically men have been expected, and it's so sad because when you look at World Health Organization, Nonhli, we say women are more depressed than men, but sadly men commit suicide more than women. And interestingly, the stats, if you want to know the stats that is on that stats, it's 15 to 29. The people that are committing suicide every year, WHO gives us stats that there's over 800,000 people who are committing suicide. And the most populous generation, population is 15 to 29. And we all know that men commit suicide more than women. So as a culture, as a global community, we need to redefine the masculinity, because if we can go in depth, men and women possess both feminine and masculine energy. So it means that we both feel, men and women both feel. If I go physiologically, if I go psychologically, we all have the same emotional centers. We all feel, right? So this has so many layers culturally, and just naturally, men have been seen as these stoic beings, but then now we are failing them. We start by failing our boy children. When a mother is raising that boy, I always challenge mothers now, what happened to that love, that compassion you had when you had your little baby, your little boy? And suddenly when he's 5, when he's 10, it's unacceptable for him to feel the pain when he's hurt, right? Sometimes people say it carelessly. Why are you crying? What will so-and-so say about you? You're referring to your girl child or your cousin's child, all that. So we start shutting boy children at that young age. And then now we wonder, in places like South Africa, where gender-based violence is so rampant, we wonder why we have angry men. But we don't look back and say, no, we shut these boys when they were little. We refused for them to feel, Nonhli. So now we need to redefine emotions. We need to redefine the world. I think the whole patriarchy system needs to be redefined, sis.
I agree with you, because we normally say to our boys, "Man up." What is that? Why do you say "man up"? We use things that, language that I think we need to stop. Why do you say "man up"? What is that? According to you, what is that? Can't we use other terms like, okay, grow up? For that, it doesn't define you that you're not man enough. And I agree with you. That is why we've got so many angry men out there, and we need to change this. People don't know, men are also getting raped.
Yes.
Men are also physically abused. Men are also emotionally abused. But how do we address that as a society? Can we start, not conforming to what we were taught and change the society? Maybe I'm passionate like you because I'm raising boys, and I've got friends here that I know that they've logged in, they're also raising boys. And it doesn't mean that you are a sissy if you cry. And when we say men don't cry, not literally that they cry their tears, but it's to talk about what you're going through, to acknowledge your feelings. Am I right by saying that?
Absolutely, yes, yes. Like I said, if we go back to the physiological being, our beings, we have the same brain nuclei. I mean, there's some difference in men and women, but then at the same time, we have the same emotional centers. We feel we have the same limbic system, the emotion centers. So when we hurt same, right? And actually, vulnerability is one of the strongest components. Even Brené Brown shares about that. You know, we have not allowed boy children. So it starts back to how do we raise boy children, right? Are we allowing them to feel? Are we allowing them to be vulnerable? Their fathers, are they showing their own suffering? Are we showing our own weaknesses, right? You know, I was actually, before I came on here, I was watching an American Psychological Association clip, a short clip of this young boy who was feeling pain because his friends were teasing him at school, and his father taught him how to fight, you know. And, you know, it's sad because this boy is coming vulnerably sad and hoping his father to nurture him and but he's teaching him how to fight. Do you understand? You know, I always say to parents, it's always best to probably, if you want to teach your child defense, things that we call it in medicine or in psychology sublimation, where if you want your child to have that self-esteem or to be able to defend himself, take him to things like karate, you know, things like that. They do help a child for self-defense, but there's discipline there. It's used in appropriate ways. Do you understand? But rather saying in an aggressive manner, because those type of karate and also like all those martial arts, they have been seen to help children, even those that are energetic, even children with ADHD. Those things do help children to build that self-esteem, to build that self-defense, but in a disciplined manner, not in an aggressive way, right? So that manning up or telling men to man up is been a very long-term phenomenon. And again, it starts in our societies. How do we have these conversations? How do we change the narratives? How do those conversations also change in our cultural perspective? How do they change in the crowds when men are doing it? How do they change? I'm closer. How do they change when we send our boys to the bush for circumcision? Why do we expect those boys must go through that circumcision without having any anesthesiology? You know, anesthetics. You know, even now, I'm actually happy to see colleagues who are advocating for medical circumcisions, because every time I was in South Africa in December, Nonhli, there were over 300 boys that died there, you know, because of sepsis. So all of this, we have said to these boys, man up. You know, these boys, probably they could have been saved if they were able to share their emotions that I'm in pain. My wound is septic. My wound is ugly. It looks ugly, but they're hiding because we are raising boys to not feel and to move away from seeing the pain they are seeing in front of them. So, and then how are we going to eradicate the gender-based violence we have? Who knows? Like one of the colleagues, I saw a post one time, she posted on Facebook. She said, who knows what happens to these boys when they grow up, and they grew up with that so much pain they sustained there. Even our fathers, our brothers, we had growing up, I had an angry uncle who ended up committing suicide. What was going on with him? You know, each of our families has such a person or have such people in our families. So what is going on in the societies in general? You look at also countries like China, when COVID hit, there was so much violence there, right? So it's a global thing. How do we start these conversations? We start at home. That's where we create all these healthy environments. When we create these healthy environments in our homes, we create a better society.
I agree with you there, because when you show your kids, boys, you show them love, you nurture that, you allow them to feel, you allow them to come back from school and tell you how the day was. You allow them to share with you that today somebody did this to me. Be open, you know, to you. It will help, because that also eradicates the anger that is building inside them. When they're angry, what happens? They end up being abusive to women. And now we forget where it started. I think we need to deal with the root cause where this
We
whole
need
thing.
to validate, Nonhli. You know, we are a society that invalidates. You know, I have many male clients that are invalidated by their spouses. Men don't cry in front of their women because their women will tell them they are sissies. So also these women, where did they get that from? Right? So it's how we are cultured in our homes, right? Many men have shared stories they've never shared with their parents or with their spouses. There's men, like you said, there's men who are raped, and now you wonder how they are showing up in marriages, how they are hopping from one relationship to the other. And actually part of the symptoms we see in depressed men is promiscuity, Nonhli. Men who are hopping, and we tend to applaud men who we call them players. They are broken and wounded men. Right? Yeah. So much is happening. And honestly, there's so much. This topic, it's quite deep, because you look at our South African context, look at our homes. Most homes are fatherless. Our homes are fatherless, right? Most of us were raised by our mothers. Where are our fathers? And of course, our history isn't helping. So we are a wounded society.
We are. Like, I'm a single parent. I'm raising 3 boys, and you know, I was chatting to them today concerning this topic. So one of my eldest son said to me, "But Mom, when you say men don't cry, do you want a man that will always cry?" He said he was posed a question, him and his friend, about 2 weeks ago. A lady said to them, do you become vulnerable to your girlfriends? Do you show your emotions, or are you scared to be judged? And I asked him, he says, no, we're not. But at the same time, if you're always crying, it's like, you know what, you're not going to be respected. So do you see what the society does, you know, to our boys? And we started having this conversation, and I said to him, I'm not saying that a man must always cry, but I want a man that will be able to be open with me, that will be able to talk to me, you know, to converse, you know, and tell me how he feels. Otherwise, you get a husband or a boyfriend that is moody and don't understand. Exactly.
And dry, with a very dry affect, right? Today, people are in marriages with dry people, right? Very dry, and you wonder why marriages don't work, relationships don't work, because this person was never hugged. This person was never told he was loved. Do you understand? And again, I want people not to say, look back and say, oh, then my parents failed me. We come from an African perspective where our parents mostly, they didn't really use the I love you word, you know. But you know what, coming from a closer perspective, if I had more umpokoko in my plate, I knew that, you know, that was love, you know what I mean? More than my cousins or whatever, but there was a way our parents showed their nurturing. Do you understand? But with the society we live in, the 21st century, where we are raising our children right now, where we need to be more affectionate. And the reality is we have taken our children now to spaces where we were never there. Like, I mean, most of people now, they afford taking their children to white schools in South Africa. Do you understand? That culture they are nurturing. You understand? Them showing hugs and love and all the kisses is something that is normal to their culture. So now our children, they do watch that. So your child could easily misinterpret that. Then mom doesn't love me if she doesn't do ABCD. Do you understand? So there's a lot involved. There's a lot involved. I think we need to start having these conversations, as uncomfortable as they may seem. Because it's cultural, it's not something, you know, we are a culture that doesn't talk about emotions, you know, but people are suffering. If you look at, actually, you know, South Africa is one of the highest countries that consumes alcohol.
Really?
Yes. If you look at the stats, South Africa is up there. And gender-based violence. Yes.
I just saw today while I was busy preparing, I saw that
after Russia.
Suicide,
we're number 2 after Russia.
Men, suicide in Africa, South Africa, it's number 1.
Yes.
And it's really, really sad. It's really, really sad. And
Yes.
how do we go about fixing this? How do we go about helping these men? You know, our boys.
It's multifactorial. I think the key thing is we need to have, there's actually things in place. I mean, the governments, we need to, unfortunately, there's a lot of NGOs. I actually had an interview with another gentleman who is part of this movement, men's movement in the Eastern Cape. You know, they're even grooming boy children who, most of them, they are fatherless, these children. Before they go to circumcision school, you know, they help them with manhood stuff, you know, so there's organizations, you know, involve the government. And I know that it can be hard to involve them, but there's so many NGOs. It starts with not these conversations we have, and then this ripples, right? It's a ripple effect. So schools, right, where there's parents, us, we love church. There's most people there. Churches are the places to go and have these conversations, right? I remember before I left South Africa, I was affiliated to Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I introduced talking about HIV, talking about cancer, you know, all these discussions that Black people don't want to talk about, right? That was back in 2006. I said, we need to start a health desk because HIV exists in church. Let us not shy away from this. HIV exists here, and I have patients who have this, who are struggling and who are hiding from you, who do not come in this space because they are scared of being judged. Let's have these conversations openly here in this space. So in places where there are people, Nonhli, that's where conversations you need to start. We need to normalize these conversations. I'm so happy to see people like Uprasilo, Uachi from Generations. He has a foundation. He's speaking up. Such influential people, we need to be in contact with such people, influential people that influence our people who look up to them. Start these conversations. Also means that they speak openly about their own mental health situations on their spaces. So when men start seeing other men speaking up and people they look up to, they say, oh, even him, he struggles. I mean, Silo mentions that in his interviews that there were a few times he was so depressed that, you know, way out was committing suicide at some point. You know, we have powerful people who we look up to, who have struggles. So when we start humanizing ourselves and knowing that we feel we are vulnerable and having these conversations and normalizing them, this world will be better.
I see here a comment at CD Monaledi saying gender-based violence increased a lot during the start of COVID-19. Why is that? Is it because now, you know, the lockdowns, we were staying now with the boyfriends, husbands that normally we avoid because, you know, you go to work, you don't get time to spend together. And now because of COVID, and also, I think also financial situation has created also this. Do you agree with me? What can
you said it all. You said it all, sis. Yes, part of that. And it became more magnified because it was closed spaces. You know, everyone was locked down. Actually, you know what? Even places like shelters here in Canada, women's shelter, they were overpopulated and also were closed because remember COVID-19, everything was closed down. So people were forced to be with these people, and children, they were also victims of this, right? Because gender-based violence is not only the woman, and also let's not underestimate that men were also abused by women during this time, right? Of course, stats shows us it's mostly women, and most of part of that is women who report more of these cases. But women, I mean, men get abused too. So you said it all. You know, and loss of jobs, there's so much anger, you know, and people were forced to go within. People are starting to think of the things that happened to them. A lot of men that came to me, there's a man actually who confessed to me that he was molested by his family doctor when he was 13. So people are forced now to go within. People are forced to go within and start telling the stories and replaying stories that happened to you when you were 6. You know, I always say seeds of pain do not get buried, you know. They are sitting there, they get triggered when something happens, a loss of a job, loss of a loved one. Look, in South Africa, you lost a lot of lives during COVID-19. When was the time to grieve, Nonhli? People didn't have time to grieve, right? So there's so much pain, you know, in the world right now. The world is grieving. There's so much grief, there's so much loss of relationships, loss of jobs, loss of money, you know, and people were already, like you were saying, already had And, we need to also stop judging people who are in these abusive relationships, because abuse is such an interesting phenomenon, because then your abuser will silence you, right? They cut off your wings. So it's important for people that work with you we need to be an observant and aware and very observant, society, because these people we dine with, and the sad thing is, even people in high positions, people who are CEOs, they are married to narcissists who will abuse them. And these women and also these men will not have the guts or the energy or the courage to speak up, because they're well respected in their workplaces. And that's how their narcissist partners thrive, right? So it's quite a sad multifactorial situation, and both sexes or all sexes, to be honest, are equally affected by this, but women tend to speak. And I think naturally for us, we've been given that permission, let me rather put it that way. Women, we spend time in the kitchen, so women tend to have that space to voice their emotions and their struggles. Men, they tend to talk about the soccer, the cars, their jobs. They don't go within and talk about, hey, I'm struggling in my relationship, I'm struggling with my health, all these things, right? So there's so many things that have caused, GBV increase during this time.
Guys, anyone who wants to ask a question, you can just raise your hand and your question will be answered. I see also here, CD saying pain is systemic. Yes. Anyone who wants to voice disable, you can unmute yourself.
Hi guys, hi Dr. Unati, lovely topic. My comment is twofold. As a mother raising a boy, I always say that we have an extra responsibility because we live in a patriarchal society, and how we raise our boys is how they're going to show up. We've seen that with the men that you interact with now, that you are almost having to dig deeper to say what is hurting this person, why is this person acting this way. So that's the one that I take my role very, very seriously, because I'm aware that I'm raising somebody's husband, somebody's friend, somebody's boyfriend. But the scenario in the West also is, with these times that we're living under, where men are providers, men are meant to be providers, and at a point where they can't provide, I feel that as women, we tend to put pressure, and we do not listen and look at the signs. We keep putting pressure, we keep putting demands, and we do not look at the signs to say, let me step back a bit and understand my person. And I think that is our contribution. We trigger the men that have got issues anyway, and that we have to provide. We can't provide. So and so has got this, so and so has done this, I want this, I want that. What did you say about these economic pressures, especially from us women triggering these men?
I couldn't have said it any better, Disable. It's so sad. And you look at other societies, in Sweden, actually, many men actually are stay-at-home husbands. Yes, and actually, mostly even in this side of the world, you find, first of all, in this side of the world, childcare is very expensive, and you are supported by the government according to your salary scale. And sometimes families, they sit down, say, you're a family physician or a doctor or whatever profession you are in, and one of your spouses or let's say your husband is probably an engineer, makes less than you, you come and sit down and say, you know what, I'm gonna raise our kids. You know what, the money I make is probably will be close to what I would pay to childcare. So such societies, those are the things that we could adopt to and start bringing into our societies, because let's go back, who said it should be women who raise kids, right? Because the boys deserve, or the girl children in general, they deserve to have access to both parents. It's just that, unfortunately, in our African culture or in our African perspective, men had to be sent away to the mines. This is a historical thing, right? So it's so sad. I don't know how we will ever eradicate it, December, because it's huge. And what do you tell your man who lost a job, who was trying, and then you have a woman who does not understand that, who demands all these things, all of the above, and could even separate from you because of what has happened? Because a lot of times these things happen. I saw it here in Canada, people who lost jobs in mines. I started seeing divorces in the small town I lived in. Young couples, we live in a society or in the world or in times where marriages now, they don't last anymore. People don't have the patience and also the resilience to stay together and fight together for this to work, right? We live in a very superficial world. People, they want to have those pictures on Instagram. We also actually, Nonhli, there's also studies that show that even social media is contributing a lot to relationships, right? People are comparing themselves with this fake life people have. Not to say everyone has a fake life there, but the reality is a lot of people are comparing themselves with all these people they are seeing on Facebook that don't have real lives there on Instagram.
And I normally say to people, social media, it's where, we should take it as a pinch of, just like a pinch of salt, because it's where we're acting, eh? We act there. Yeah, it's not the real us. You act. We all are actors here at Facebook. Right. And if you put yourself under pressure because of the things that you see on Facebook, it's just going to drive you insane. Social media will drive you really crazy. So just look at that thing, because you see Nonhli being somewhere, being happy, drinking wine or doing that. And that's not me. You don't know that I've got problems. You don't know how broken I am. So you just see whatever you want to see. You make your own conclusion and you think that I've got the best life. So I think if we can also teach our boys that, you know what, just do you. Do you?
So you know what, Nonhli, it takes me to another discussion. I have a program I created for parents where we need to, by the way, self-esteem in children is built as early as 3 years. So we need to start, our children need to understand their sense of self as early as 3. How we come across, what do we say to them? What words do we use to them? What acts, what do we do to them? Boys and children equal, boys and girls equally. So when we ourselves as parents are wounded and never healed, like I said, many people are coming with so much pain to parenting and they never healed from, right? You come with your wounds, and many authors will say this: children are the best teachers of life. When your child is challenging you or showing you or mirroring your childhood, you are invited to go in within and heal. When you see something that annoys and irritates you in your child, you are invited to go back to your own story. Children are the best gifts. Others, sometimes they even say, do not have children before you heal, because you're gonna replicate, you're gonna multiply you. So when we have children, we are invited to go within and go back to those stories we never healed from. Otherwise, we multiply ourselves and we multiply all these traumatic beings who will continue bleeding to people who never hurt them.
Yeah, and I think especially men, because of their upbringing in their head, and they take it out on their women. Yes. They take it out on their girlfriends, So yeah, we need to really talk about this, and we need to give them love. We need to show them love. And the other thing, they're scared to also, for example, when a man is raped, they won't go to the police station to open a case, because when you
get there, the police station Nonhli also terrorize them. Exactly. The policeman will terrorize them. Mm-hmm. We are a wounded society. We are not supportive of each other. So what's the point of going there? That's basically what men say. And when they're abused also physically by their partners and emotional, don't even go to the emotional aspect. How many men are abused by women and silently keep going with life? And you wonder why men abuse drugs, why men are alcoholics, why men are womanizers. Do you ever sit down and think about why?
I never, coming to abusing alcohol, yeah, we're thinking that they've got a problem. We just say you're an alcoholic, but we don't go back and, you know, see where it comes from. And also coming to be a womanizer, we're thinking that, this guy, oratas kid, you know, doesn't want to see anyone, but we don't know what led to that. So,
or even his father was the same. It becomes intergenerational. He has never seen his father. Like I said, we are raised by fatherless homes. Where did he see how to treat a woman? Right? Maybe the first time he interacted with a man, it was seeing his father verbally and physically abusing his mother. And at that time, he was a little boy and helpless, didn't have the power to overpower his dad. That trauma doesn't die. It sits with you. That's the introduction. That's the first template you are introduced to life. That is how you should do things. And sadly, sometimes those type of men will even attract an abusive woman. If they were abused, they were raised by an abusive woman. It's vice versa.
I know.
Right? Yes. So I think the key thing is we need to start having these conversations and also just having these real and honest conversations with ourselves. I always say COVID-19 happened to us to go within. It happened for us to all go within and see, what can I improve about myself? What can I do to be a better human, to be a better citizen, to be a better mother, to be a better father, to be a better sister, to be a better parent, to be a better co-worker, right? And also, one time I was invited by one of the corporate places here in South Africa. I said, what systems are you putting in place right now as you move back to work? Now people who are working from home, what are you bringing in place for your co-workers, for your staff, for mental health? Because this needs a collective healing. What just happened? Many people, they get fired from work because they are labeled alcoholics. Alcoholism is a disease, Nonhli. It needs medical attention and medical treatment. But we label these people. We make fun of them. It is a mental, medical condition that needs attention, medical attention. And it can be genetic too. When you look down in the history of the families, there is probably an uncle who was an alcoholic. Same applies to mental health, other mental health illnesses. So I think as a society, we are invited to have these raw conversations, starting with ourselves. Each one of us knows ourselves. We know where we can improve. We know our weaknesses. We know our strong points. Where do you want to live a peaceful, happy life, right? To be a better human and a better citizen and make this world a better place.
Yeah, we need to tap into our, ourselves, and those who have men who are raising boys like me, and ask, how do we talk to our boys? How do we relate to them?
Yes.
Are we making them, how we relate to them, how we converse with them? Are we making them to be confident, or are we really emotionally abusing them? Because that is going to reflect in future on their partners, Yes. So you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, Doctor. I'm actually the host's firstborn son.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to comment and make an observation that I've seen in myself and also in my peers and my friends. I'm turning 28 this year, and it seems that a lot of young men that are my age and my position are struggling and trying to find their place within the world and trying to define exactly what a man is. Because back in the day, it was very clear the roles a man had to provide, and the woman was kind of a homemaker and a mother. But now in a great way, we've seen that women are both homemaker and can be CEO. So what once gave us men such pride, saying we're the protectors, we're the providers, we're seeing that women can do as well, in addition to being homemakers and mothers. So it leaves us in this purgatory where we're trying to find ourselves again. But at the same time, we don't have that time because life is moving so fast and we're being pressured to man up and to do all these things, but we don't quite know anymore what man up means. We're trying to define what a man is in this day and age. we've lost our footing, and we're trying to find out exactly who we are and what we're supposed to be doing, because our women are now cooking, taking care of the babies, and still going to work. What do I do? What is the definition of me?
Can I say this to you? Actually, I want to send it back to you. Do you think we need to redefine patriarchy? Because I always say we're gonna help this when we come together as all these sexes, because truly you're right, women now, and actually now even mostly nowadays the millennials, this is a population that is going to change the world, that is changing the world. He's already saying it. They're trying to find their footing in the world. But the reality is, when you look at in North America right now, there's something called gray divorce, G-R-A-Y, gray divorce, where mostly women or men who are our parents' age, my mom is 60, 61, that age is divorcing right now. And yet our age and going low to your son's age, they are not getting married. So now what is going on? People are not getting married because they are fearful of what your son just mentioned here, that what am I gonna do? Like when I get married, I'm not gonna provide, because women now are taking spaces, and that's the reality of the 21st century. Women are empowered, and it's good. I think we are in the phase where we are redefining the world, and I think we need to go with the times. And indeed, it's up to the parents now. How are you raising your child to understand his or her sense of being and his or her position in the world, right? Are we raising our children to be more materialistically inclined, or are they raised to know who they are, irrespective or despite having all those things, right? So it's so much, it's packed. I would still go back to, we need to redefine patriarchy. I don't think it's working now in this generation we are raising kids today. And women are continuing taking spaces. And I'm happy to see places like Malawi, where this woman chief who had ended over 800 child marriages and sending those kids, those girl children to school. We want girl children to be empowered. But then also I'm mindful, Tsecho, of this new toxic feminism. You know, I think women also, in order to still take their place, you still need to maintain your femininity while you are in your power, right? But now I think what has happened is things have shifted. Women now, they are starting to see their position in the world, and it has gone extreme. I think you're also seeing that playing out.
It's something that's a bit scary to me. Watching my generation, I can only imagine what we're going to look like when we're in our 50s or 60s. The ripple effects of what we're doing. There won't be, there
won't be any children.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree.
I think we just need, as a society, to come together and redefine this whole thing. We have seen that it's not working, and not to say I am demolishing everything we learned from our ancestors. Great things we learned from their resilience as part of it. But I think we need to see things as they are and also go with the times, but more so, we are social animals. Humans need each other. I think we need to go back to the olden days where we have these conversations. They are healing, right? You know, not just only on this Zoom meeting we have. We need to take them to our villages to have these conversations, and in the manner that our old folks would understand. You know, the key thing is the approach. How do you approach the people in those spaces to understand and be receptive of what you want to teach them? You come to their level. You teach psychology in the manner that will be understood in their language.
No, that's true. Anyone who wants to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, Nonhli, and hi, Doctor. I realized I can't put up my hand, so I'm sorry to just jump in there. Interesting conversation. I'm disagreeing with some of the things or some of the points, but let me just go to the few things that I highlighted, right? I think and I'll come back to the conversation today. But just talking briefly around marriages, it's very important to understand that the initial base for marriage, if you look at where it comes from, it was more for security, right? Going back to the times of the pharaohs, people were married or getting married because if my family is married into your family, then you won't kill my children. So it was that protection, right?
Yes.
It then evolved into the security, which is what basically somehow Tseho is referring to. Tseho is referring to when he's saying, what position are we finding ourselves? The economy at that time, when you call it civilization, demanded the physical strength. So that the economy was built on the physical strength. So which made it necessary that men had to step up, otherwise, and move forward and do the work that they were doing, building the roads, going into the mines. So it was the makeup of the economy then. But fast forward now, the economy is requesting something completely different, right? There's artificial intelligence, and we're seeing the participation of women in the economy better than what it was, right? So it's not as if had we had artificial intelligence, then women would have been doing what they're doing now. It was just that from strength point of view, we were limited, and that's why we're not participating. And so it takes me back to when we say, firstly, I don't agree with the word raise. We can't raise human beings. You can raise animals, but you can nurture human beings, because by raising, you are instilling your own perceptions and your own opinion onto that person, and you're grooming them into a box. But when you are nurturing them, you are respecting the cosmic or the universal contract that you have. I'm saying, Tiamo, as my son, I respect the contracting that you took with me as your mother. And I'm trusting that your purpose and those who've allowed you to be here will guide you. I will here nurture you, grow through you, as you said, doctor, that some of us are wounded and we need to, all of that. But that's another conversation. Coming back to how do we nurture and collaborate with the people that are taking the spaces we're calling the children, be it females or males, because remember, we can't nurture Tseho that much that we leave in city behind. It's about who are we, right? I'm hearing us being so constrained around the functionalities that we feel feeling as human beings. And Tseho saying, what is my position? Because we're only seeing our position as humanity from the functional role point of view, right? But who are we as humanity? Why were we born? Because the moment we are having those conversations, we have taken this layer of expectations of one another, right? Because our parents don't know what they don't know. They raised us the way they raised us, right? And how they thought it was, and trust me, the society that's coming after us, they will judge us as liberal as we're thinking we are as parents. They will look at us and be like, why did they do that? So for me, I always say that, if you want to extract the orange juice, you won't go to the apple juice, right? You want to extract it out of the apple. So you need to know beyond the DNA, beyond the biological frame, beyond what my vagina can do. Who am I as a person? There must have been a purpose. There must have been, there's a medical calculation on what it means for a sperm and an egg to meet. Apparently it's millions and millions. I never get the number right, but
the only one that will hit city.
Right.
So you are that special. You are that special, sis. You're right.
Yes. To hit is beyond how many children can come through my womb. Is beyond the layer of house and the stories of the house that I'm going to have, right? I live a very privileged life, and I'm very unapologetic about that because I've worked very hard for that. And I know my position, but I also know that I came here very naked and I'll leave naked. And yes, my family will decide to put few good shoes that I love in the casket, unless it but I will live naked. And so for me, those are the factors or the true facts of life. You are born, that's the truth. You die, that's the truth. In between, it's a perception. In between, it's a perception.
I couldn't agree with you more, Siri. It's beautiful, sis. You're right. Like our purpose, what are we here for? I think that's basically what you're saying, just to piggyback what you're saying. What are we here for, Nonhli? What are we here for? And actually, what your concept, you remind me of this beautiful author here, Dr. What's her name? I forgot her. She's big with childhood, actually. She talks about parenting, how we need to stop thinking that we'll shape our kids according to what we want them to be. We need to be coaches. We need to be more mentors and let our children be, because they came free and abundant. We are limiting as parents. So you're right when you say we shouldn't use the word raise, because when we raise, we have an agenda and we limit our children. So it's beautiful. Well put, sis. Thank you.
Thank you, Siri. Anybody else? We left with 6 minutes.
Tabari, I'm going to put it down here on the chat box. She's beautiful. She's on Facebook too.
Okay. Do we have anyone that wants to say something? I think from this, what I've learned from our conversation is it's very important on how we talk to our kids, to our children, boy, child. It's very important. And it's also very important to nurture them and make them to be confident, self-confidence. I think self-confidence, and to love them and to show them that it's okay. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to tell me your feelings, and to tell them how much we love them. Because, you know, if you think back, looking at the boyfriend that you had that never loved you the way you thought, you know, you'll be loved, and you find out that it's because of it was never raised by a mother, the mother died at a young age. And so all these things, you know, they have an impact in future. So what I'm trying to say that I've learned that what we do now is going to impact our children's future. Tomorrow's dads, you know, how they're going to love their wives, how they're going to also, you know, love their children. And the other thing before we finish, Doctor, I've realized, or my observation is, the children that are raised by single parents, they become more successful than two parents. I don't know. Is it my observation or what?
Not on the stats. I mean, psychology tells us this: any child raised by both parents, because that's basically what any child needs.
Yes.
We need nurturing from our fathers, from our dads. That's why, which is a topic for another day, that absent fathers, or you know, the absent father syndrome, and why today we end up seeing teenage pregnancies because girl children are trying to look for love in wrong places. It's another topic for another day. But psychologically, a child, there's something in the 90s, late in 1998, Kaiser Permanente Institute and CDC in the States, they came up with this study. They looked at these professionals who were actually executive people doing great, but struggling mentally. And they looked at these people, they did this study, it's called Adverse Childhood Experiences. They looked and asked them 10 questions. When you were young, between 0 to 18, were your parents married? Was there any separation or divorce? In your community where you lived, was there any trauma, right? Was there any chaos? Where you lived in your home, was there any violence? Were your parents fighting? Any of your family members ever been jailed? Was there any alcoholism? Was there any sexual abuse, physical abuse? Was there anyone, were you ever hungry, poverty, all these factors? Or were you growing up in a place where there were wars? So all these things are traumatic to a brain, to a growing brain, right? So this happens to a child. So these things, we can't underestimate the fact that these things are basic needs of a child, you know, but unfortunately, the world is the way it is. We find ourselves being raised by single parents, which they do the best they can. But statistically, kids that are raised by both healthy, I need to add that part, healthy families that are raising children, they tend to have successful lives in future. And not to underestimate those that are born to single parents, because remember, mostly if I talk about our culture specifically, we have grandparents that chip in, we have uncles, provided a child, it doesn't have to be biological, is raised in a healthy environment, but statistically, children raised in healthy homes with both parents have a better thriving statistics. And actually what I was mentioning, with that trauma those kids were exposed to, we're starting to see that this contributes to why we deal with mental health issues today, the conditions people have, the diabetes. If you care to know, things like diabetes or obesity, they come mostly from stress, cortisol levels, which when you are exposed to that at a younger age, continuously exposed to such trauma, could lead to all these diseases. And these people, they tend to have short life expectancy in the later stage. So it's a whole lot of things. It's more of a physiology that we don't think about when these things happen. We think that when people have all these dysfunctionalities in their homes, they wouldn't affect children at a later stage. So to answer your question, statistically, kids that are raised in healthy environments with both parents, they thrive better. But kudos to parents who are raising their children, single parents, because we tend to have other people that came and helped you, or sometimes you don't have that opportunity, but we do have them successful too. But statistically, it's people who are raised in healthy environments, and even health-wise, not even academically succeeding, health-wise, they have better lifespans.
Disebo, we'll take you last. Yes, you can unmute yourself. Disebo?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just to build on what you guys have just said, just my economic issue, that I think at the end of the day, we need to be present, because I find that as you change the money, as you change the world, as you change the good life, we tend to see money as a problem, and we see that kids should best school, but we don't have the conversation that we have with our children and expect them to do that. And I think it's pretty likely that self-confidence and self-esteem that is a very important. So we need that, because we are busy chasing and making sure that our families are well off, nothing wrong with that. And I think we need to invest in that.
Disebo, we're struggling to hear you. I don't know if I'm the only one.
Yeah, I couldn't hear her too.
We're struggling to hear you.
Oh, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
And I was saying, I hope that I will get my score. I was saying that in a bit to a parent, a working parent, we tend to give the responsibility to raise our kids to school. We don't make the time to contribute, to listen, to engage with our kids. So I'm inviting all of us to be present parents, whether to a boy child or to a girl child.
Okay. Thank you, Disebo. Thank you, Dr. UNATI. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody who participated and everybody who logged in. And we can carry on with our conversation on Facebook, because it is live on Facebook. And Dr. UNATI will be gladly available to chat and to answer your questions. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you very much.